All right, up this week is the cage match you didn't know you needed to watch, and then is Agile versus Waterfall. Projects use really two primary methods of delivery, especially for technology projects. So you might have heard of Agile and Waterfall methods. Each of them is different. There's different styles and approaches, and there's been a ton of debate. I think Agile's been out for 20 years, and I constantly see debate over when to use Agile. Agile's better. It's not. So it feels like sort of this cage match. So hopefully today will be a fun but informative showdown. We're in the left corner. We have the master of momentum. That is Agile, and in the right we have the heavyweight of hierarchy known as Waterfall in his unitard. And so, look, let's meet the fighters. Agile is about being sort of nimble and fast and iterative. So it's fast-footed. It loves feedback, and so you get feedback early. It's about prioritizing work and sequencing the most important work early, and having quick demos and early releases, so you get a sense of if you're going down the right path, so that you can then make changes early. So it's really good at changes. But because it's so quick, maybe sometimes it loses sight of the bigger picture. Whereas waterfall on the right is your literally looks like a waterfall when you see the chart. It's a giant planning phase, and then a giant requirements phase, and then a giant design phase and building and so on. And so it's all about sort of sequencing out. You do all your planning up front. So it's not great for changes, especially as you get later in the phases. It doesn't really like surprises because you've already sort of locked one phase before you move to the next one. And it's sort of a traditional program. So those were our fighters. So when you look at the match, round one about planning, because you spend all the time up front, Waterfall lands the massive punch early on because you do that upfront plan. But round two, when you get to flexibility, Agile kind of dodges the blows there with a mid-sprint pivot because it does provide more flexibility, and there's constant ceremonies where you can shift scope and priorities. When you get to round three on stakeholder involvement, Agile's pretty good in that way. There's a product owner that literally owns the solution, and so it engages the stakeholders early. Whereas in Waterfall, sometimes you might solicit requirements early on, and then the stakeholders don't see anything until build, which might be months down the road. From delivery, Agile is quick iterative jabs, but Waterfall charges up for one sort of giant release at the end. Round five, risk. Agile adapts mid-flight, and then Waterfall just bets everything early on with its plan. So different approaches there. We're getting later in the match here, round six for visibility. Agile shows progress every round, and Waterfall hides behind a curtain until the finale. I don't know if I agree with that so much, but because Waterfall also has reports and dashboards and so on, so there's visibility. It's just you have to wait to sort of see your product at the end. And then team dynamics is Agile is way more cross-functional and inclusive with different areas versus Waterfall sort of is very siloed. So, look, which fighter do you pick? That's the question. And I think there's different style for different projects. So if it's a fast-paced, evolving environment like a startup or something, Agile's probably better. Or with new technology, where waterfall shines in regulated or predictable projects, maybe construction, right, industries. So Agile's needed when feedback is frequent and requirements shift. But waterfall, if scope is your fixed, right, I'm making a building and it looks this way, and your risk tolerance is low, waterfall's probably better. And there are options that sort of exist in between, different hybrid ones that you can look up. But it really is about knowing your industry and your company and your project and your team, and then picking the right fighter. And so the final verdict, look, it's a draw. There's no knockout today. Both methodologies have strengths depending on the context, the type of program, the type of industry, and so on. And the best PMs understand both and mix and match. So I'm a big fan of using Agile methods and principles in programs that aren't even run with Agile. The concept of transparency and stand-ups and things like that. Look, an agile isn't always faster and waterfall isn't always slower. So we really got to look at sort of the enemies of misalignment and communications. And I really believe this, that it doesn't matter the methodology. What makes them successful is having the right team members, the right people, and then the things that we do the best, bringing structure, diligence, and transparency. So hopefully you enjoyed the Cade match. You didn't lose a bet and pick on the wrong fighter. And thanks for watching the video.